asked me, I could write a book about the way you walk and talk and whisper and look.
Mighty real. In the 70s, drag was taken to new heights, or depths depending on the point of view, by a gender-bending group of hippies from the West Coast called the Cockettes. Their organized madness and sexually transgressive shows and lifestyle mesmerized devoted San Francisco audiences. Major publications covered them, hoping that these crazy fairies would titillate their readers. This was not your father's or even your bachelor uncle's drag. This was flower-powered, anti-establishment, gay-powered drag, designed to skewer morality and tradition. Of course, I was dying to see them. Nearly 50 drag queens boarded a plane and flew across the country to premiere a new show here. The producers arranged for a cheap hotel. It was a rundown, seedy flophouse that some might say had character, but what it did have was characters. Some of whom were well stocked with heroin, uppers, downers, coke, grass, whatever the drug of choice happened to be. When they arrived at the theater, I was there to greet them. How I got there escapes me. It was that time. It might have been through a friend at the public theater, or maybe a bar, but it could have been anyone, anywhere. Such was life in New York in those days. Oh, you're free tomorrow? Come with me to meet the Cockettes, this outrageous drag show from San Francisco, and help them unpack. It'll be a blast, and we'll get free tickets. What was your name again? At the theater, there was a dizzying round of introductions. Some of the guys were startlingly cute. Some were stunning, and others the epitome of masculine good looks, except for the errant camisole or nylons. Their opening act, a singer named Sylvester, was a bit over to the side, checking out the layout, the lights, and talking with what I presume to be his band and backup singers. He was beautifully made up with a flowing, colorful silk top over tight, tight leather pants. A few people were unpacking clothes and props from the boxes and luggage and putting it around the stage. It turned out there was no sound system, no lights to speak of, no curtain, and minimal backstage area. But Sylvester was the only one who registered dismay at this situation. There was a flurry of activity down front, so I made my way there to see what was happening. Someone had been industrious at the hotel and secured a large amount of heroin. And the cast was passing a couple of syringes around, and a lot of them were shooting up. I had been around heroin a bit, but never seen it used in so blatant a manner. When it came to me, I passed it on to the next eager recipient. No one seemed to care or even notice that I wasn't partaking. Nights with the Cockettes were filled with parties in their honor, some quite fancy with great food and free-flowing cocktails. They were the talk of the town and were milking their notoriety for all it was worth. Open tabs at numerous bars and local diners, free cars, rubbing elbows and other body parts with the famous and the infamous. This meant that their days were spent hungover and that rehearsals were painfully slow and scattered when they happened at all. Cockette shows in San Francisco were happenings, spontaneous, minimally rehearsed, sloppy, campy fun. While this was a hit there, it was not at all clear to me that the same would happen in New York City. I went to a couple of the parties, but the drugs and the toxic mix of the scene and the wannabe scene was not my scene. I did go to the theater every day, however, if only to watch and listen to Sylvester rehearse. While the Cockettes' days were spent sleeping off or continuing the excesses of the night before, I would be sitting in the Anderson Theater, right down the street from here, and the audience of one, and being an audience of one for one of the most eclectic, talented performers I had ever seen. However anarchic and irresponsible the group might have been, their opening act was serious. Sylvester was not going to blow this big chance. He was a great singer, at that time doing amazing covers of R&B hits. He had the added hook of performing in drag, or his version of it, as an out gay black man. Each night of the run, his band got tighter, his vocals got more exciting, and his clothes and makeup got more extravagant. I would be there in the front row, or standing in the back of the house. I felt like I was watching a star explode into a supernova, in full brilliance, shining and shooting through the sky. Here was a man, dress or not, who rivaled the star power and vocal artistry of Aretha Franklin and Patti LaBelle. He was aware that the Cockettes were a mess, but he was going to emerge a full-fledged star from what might be their ashes. He was right on both counts. The Cockettes had no resources to speak of and no energy thanks to the parties and the drinking and the drugging. The theater was enormous, almost twice the size of what they were used to. None of their sets worked in the space and had to be rebuilt from scratch in 6 days. I helped where I could and got a few other gay theater guys from the village to help out. The show was called Tinsel Tarts in a Hot Coma, a send-up of 30s Hollywood movie musicals about Broadway. There were some funny ideas and delightful songs, but they got lost in the general mayhem around them. The opening night audience was as star-studded as anyone could have hoped, except for tonight, of course. With such celebrities as John Lennon and Yoko Ono, Liza Minnelli, Truman Capote, Gore Vidal, and Angela Lansbury. Andy Warhol showed up with his famed drag contingent, including Candy Darling and Holly Woodlawn. I sat with Holly on opening night. The famous and the elite and the powerful expected to be wowed by hilarity and music with dazzling campy sets and costumes and an all-around good time with naughty boys dressed like girls. Given the way the Cockettes had squandered their first week in New York, there was no way this was going to happen, and it didn't. Gore Vidal was quoted as saying, "Having no talent is not enough." And poor Angela just walked out well before the end, followed closely by the Warhol clan. Holly tried to talk me into leaving for a couple of shots at Max's Kansas City, but I stayed with the show. The theater was less than half full by the lackluster finale. The Cockettes seemed to think that their very presence on stage, ethereal, covered in glitter, flitting around like acid-taking, smack-shooting woodland nymphs, was all that was needed to put on a show. Tinsel Tarts played for 1 week of the 3-week run, to emptier and emptier houses. Sylvester continued to tear down those shrinking houses, but he was the only success. For the remaining 2 weeks of the run, the company decided to switch shows and present one of their California hits, an original musical called Pearls Over Shanghai. It was terrific, and even a rave in the Village Voice, but the damage had already been done. Sometime during those last 2 weeks, Sylvester left the production and went on to pursue his own fame and fortune, and succeeded with smash disco hero hits like Mighty Real. There's a documentary about the Cockettes that is a fascinating glimpse at these men and the times in which they lived. At the premiere of the movie in San Francisco's famed Castro Theater, surviving members of the group attended in full drag. There was a photo shoot with a seat marked for each of the names of the original troupe, in tribute to the colorful band of theatrical fairies. But their number had been decimated by AIDS, which at the time of the passing needles and the playful fucking in New York was not even a glimmer on a dark horizon. Fully 3/4 of the seats were empty. I wondered if there was a chair for Sylvester. And I thought of the many empty chairs in my own life, and my heart broke with sadness and anger